Okay, so we're going to do a little lesson here on the basics of Photoshop. So the computers are programmed, or they should have what's called Photoshop Elements 7 or 8 installed on them. If you can't find it yet, I'll help you find it. It's kind of a rinky-dink program, but for most of the things that we do in this course, it will work. So here's how Photoshop works. So you've got the screen open. Go to File, Open, and you go looking for the photos that you need. So I'm going to grab one of the test pictures that you guys took last week. Not that one, not that one. Okay, so here's one of the test photos from last week. So in terms of, yeah, you remember this thing. You guys are taking pictures of yourself in midair, and this is a good shot. Our subject is sharp. It's not an easy shot to take because it's indoors, so it's going to be a little bit dark, but that's okay. We can fix that a bit. Artistically speaking, just as an aside, artistically speaking, what artistic technique is being used in this photo? Anybody know, looking at it? One of the artistic techniques that I talked to you about? What is it, Sudie? No, not panning. I don't think the camera was moved because the background looks sharp. Wasn't panning. Yep. Juxtaposition? Maybe. Well, the juxtaposition means that something else in the element is doing something different. So it could be this sedentary pose here juxtaposed against somebody in motion. You could call that juxtaposition. Yeah. Rule of thirds. Yeah, we definitely have rule of thirds here. If you put a tic-tac-toe grid across like this, our subject is pretty much in that upper right point. So it's a good rule of thirds photo. Now, we're going to do some adjustments on this photo. So the first thing you do when you're photoshopping a picture, like the first thing you do, okay, folks, you gotta look up here, look at the big screen. The first thing you do is you have to adjust the resolution. All right, so the resolution is listed under Image. Go to Image, Resize. There we go, Image Size. So it does depend on the camera that you're using, but most cameras will take the picture in a resolution of 72 or maybe 180 pixels. What that means is in an inch of photo space at the moment, there are 72 dots of color that make up that photo. 72. Now, for print quality productions like a yearbook, the standard must be 300. That is the best quality print you can get. You could go higher than 300, but we don't have printing presses that can generate more than 300 dots of color per inch. Right? So 300 is considered the industry standard for print publications. So what we're going to do, we're going to change this number from 72 to 300. And watch what happens to the width and the height of the photo. Because right now the width of the photo is listed at 60 inches and the height is 40 inches. The 60-inch photo, how wide is that photo in feet? Any idea? 60 inches? No? It's 5 feet. It's 5 feet wide. It's as wide as I am tall. All right? This is a massive photo right now. We don't publish 5-foot long photos. They wouldn't fit in our 1.5-foot book. So we need to bring this thing down, and you're going to see that when we compress the resolution, we add dots, the photo size will shrink. So I'm going to turn this to 300 and watch how the width and the height go down. You see how they changed? Went down to 14 inches and 9 inches. The reason this is important is when we start designing our book, we need to know what's the maximum size this photo can be. So at full resolution, full quality resolution, this picture can still be 14 inches wide, which is over a foot wide, by 9 inches tall. So that's almost as big as the book itself. Right? That is a very large photo. We wouldn't run a photo that big anyway, but it gives us a sense of its total size. Right? If we don't do that, then we could be mistaken into thinking that, oh, this picture can be as big as we need it to be. No, if we print it at 72 resolution, it's not going to look good. And that's where my next demo goes. So I'm going to change it to 300. Key thing when you're changing the size, there's a little thing here that says resample image. If yours is checked on, make sure it's checked off. It should not be checked on at all. It should just be blank, and what you'll do is you'll get a resized photo. If you click OK, you won't notice a difference in the photo at all. but a change has been made to the photo. Now, to give you an example of what happens with photos if they're oversized, I'm going to show you now. So Maddie drew a little happy face on this balloon, right? So you ever see like a birthday balloon with text on it? It says like happy birthday, but it's all squished together because it's undersized. All right, so I'm going to blow this thing up. So here we go. So right now, can you guys all see that there's like this graphic on it? The face, okay, it looks fairly clean, a little bit small. I'm going to blow it up. And I just blew it up. My bad. Okay. That shouldn't happen. What do you think happened to that picture as it was blowing up? Jessica? You can see it clear, but if I kept blowing it and it didn't blow up in my face, what would have happened to the picture? Then it would start to stretch out and it wouldn't be That's right, yeah. The graphic, once you get beyond the natural size of the balloon, which apparently I've already met, it's going to stretch out so far that there's going to be gaps between the graphic. And that's what happens to a photo that's oversized, is that you can start seeing gaps in the color and it doesn't look very nice anymore. So that's why it's really important for us to make that first adjustment, which is to set our photo always to 300 resolution, and then it gives you your maximum size so you don't blow it up any larger than that. Okay, next step. Photo is a little bit dark because it was shot indoors and the camera had to be shot very quickly. So we're going to lighten this photo a little bit. So we go to Enhance, Adjust Lighting, and Levels. And you get a graphic that looks like this. There's a lot of complicated stuff in this graphic, but it doesn't need to be complicated for our use. You basically see a mountain here. On the left, we have what are called the dark tones. On the right, we have the highlights, and in the middle are the mid-tones. So the dark tones would be things like the stairs here, which are dark, our subject's shirt, the darker tones here in the painting. Our light tones, there aren't too many. It would be, I think, a phone. Is that a phone in your hand? Maybe it's like an iPhone here, and the soles of the shoes, and a little bit of the speckling in the floor. What you need to do to adjust the levels in this photo is to bring the arrows to the edge of the mountain. So we're going to bring the light tones up to the edge of the mountain like this. So you see the difference? That's what we had. This is what we have. You see how it's brighter? Okay. If we keep bringing this up, you'll see it'll get too bright. It's over bright. Now you might recognize that our subject now has the right amount of light, but at the expense of over lightening the background. So there's a more complicated way of fixing this photo that we'll do another day. But for now, let's just say we want to bring the photo up to its rightful light levels. We can adjust our subject later, like I said, through a more complicated thing. The dark tones can sometimes need adjusting. Not usually as much. We bring it in a little bit. When you do that, what it does is it creates a little bit of contrast. So our photo doesn't look so flat or washed out. So we get a little more contrast. And again, you click that preview button, you will see what you had and what you have. Every single photo we take will probably need to have its levels adjusted, unless you take the photo outside. It's about the only circumstance where you're going to get the levels perfectly. Indoor lighting is always a little bit flawed. You need to adjust the levels. Okay, so we click OK. Now we're going to do a simple crop. Now a crop is where you remove part of this photo. So if we were going to remove part of this photo, what part would we remove? Any ideas what you wouldn't need? Yeah, Sudie? Well, maybe we could take some of the ground. There isn't a lot of ground to take out. I'm not thinking so much the ground. Yeah, Sudie? Probably the back a little bit, right? We can even get more rule of thirds if we trim a bit of the back off, because although our subject is, the rule of third point would be about here. If we trim a little bit of this off, she'll be exactly where we want her. So let's try trimming like this. So I've used the crop tool, and I'm going to place it like this. Maybe I'll take a little bit of the floor out, like you suggest. I'll take a little bit of the top of the photo off, maybe a little bit like that. Let's have a look at it. There we go. Now, using the undo history tool, I can show you what the photo looked like before we made this adjustment. Before, after. It's not a photo that needed a lot of cropping, but a little bit does help. It just takes away some of the distraction. It improves our rule of third effect. Strangely enough, people find rectangular frames more interesting than square frames. It's just the way it is. That if you can create a rectangular frame, it's more engaging than just the plain old square. It's also a little more useful in graphic design. So we've got a frame that's a little more rectangular. We could even crop it again if we wanted to make this like super rectangular. We could trim the floor as Sudhi suggested. Maybe that'll work. We can kind of have a look at how this looks. And now we have a much more rectangular frame. It's going to allow us to zoom in more and see more of our subject. All right, so you kind of go by your eye and say, okay, what part of this photo is necessary? What part is not necessary? What do I want to do with this photo graphically? Do I want to create a really extreme horizontal picture, or do I want to create a vertical picture? So let me just go back. Let's say I just want my subject jumping. I want to do an extreme vertical. I can do that, crop it too. Now I got a vertical. Not as good a photo, I think, but that's cropping. Now, those are the main adjustments that we make. We always adjust the resolution, we adjust our levels, we crop the photo to our needs, and then we save it. Now, when you save it, the photo will have, your camera puts a code on it. It'll usually have something like IMG underscore a number, and that's just the number of photos that camera has taken. So this particular camera has taken over 1,000 photos. It's going on about 2,000 photos. These codes mean nothing to us. You'll have hundreds and hundreds of photos with codes that you won't even know what they are when you look at them in a list. So you got to give your photos a name. So when you save it, always do save as. And you're going to save it in whatever folder you want and give it a name that you're going to recognize, like jump from stairs. A photo now, the name will mean something for you. It'll remind you, oh yeah, this is jumping from stairs. I know what this photo is. I don't have to look at it. I just know from looking at the file name. We usually save our stuff as JPEGs and make sure that the image quality is always set to the highest up here. And you click OK. The name's going to change, and that's really key. By doing a save as, what have we preserved? We saved as, so therefore we preserved what? Yeah, the original photo. So if you're not happy with the changes you made, you still have your original. You can go back. You're like, oh, I really should have done this as a vertical. The original is still there. You save as, you now have basically created an edited copy of your photo. And that's it. Those are the basic Photoshop things. I'm going to talk to you guys about some of the more specific Photoshop adjustments that we're going to do in this class. But for now, that is it. I'm going to hit stop broadcast, and I hope you enjoyed this Photoshop lesson.